Welcome back to TLJ Garage. In today's episode, I'm doing something I've always wanted to do. At this point, I've spent months looking for the absolutely perfect smart car, and I finally found it. This is currently my daily driver, and I love it, but sometimes it just doesn't do the job for me. For example, if I want to haul something like golf clubs, a person, everything just feels like it's too heavy, it's too small. I've always wanted a truck I can off-road, and gas is too expensive right now, so I'm just going to build one. The reason that this specific smart car is my dream car is because this is actually the Brabus edition, which is the special model. You hardly ever see these. What Brabus is it's the company, I'll put up some pictures, but it's a company that does wide body Mercedes, 6x6 Mercedes, off-road everything Mercedes, the 4x4, carbon everything. Basically, Brabus makes all of the cool Mercedes, including this one. This is the coolest smart car you could possibly get, and it's about to get cooler. First of all, the thing that separates the Brabus from the basic one is you get different bumpers, exhaust. The wheels in the back are 2 inches bigger than the wheels in the front, and they say Brabus on them, which is very cool. The interior of this car is all leather, and it's got heated seats. This one actually has navigation, but I'm not paying for it. It's got AC, everything like that. And the coolest thing about these cars, I never even knew where the engine was. For the most part, I thought that they were electric, which some of them are, but this is the gas model. The engine is actually underneath this panel. So if you lift this up and pull up this panel, the engine's right under here. So it's a little 1.0 liter 3-cylinder, makes, I believe, 76 horsepower. And it's very slow, but it gets really good gas mileage. So obviously in the thumbnail, my goal for this car is just to build something insane. I've always wanted to build a car. The Corvette's the closest thing I've ever got to doing that, but this is fully going to be everything that I actually want to do rather than just fixing something. For me, at least, the coolest thing about this car is that it's going to be for sale on Cars and Bids, which is Doug DeMuro's website. I'm just a huge fan of him, and I wanted to show that I can build something crazy, so just going to get started. So everything that I'm doing to this car comes from a company called Little Big Smart. Basically, it's a kit where you go through, select your options, and then they ship you out every single thing you need to complete your smart car. So I've got the wheels and tires here. This is the full lift kit for the rear and the front. It's very simple. And these are billet aluminum adapters that'll get you from 3-lug to 4-lug to mount these tires onto that car, which sounds crazy, and it's gonna be, but it should go good. For up front, I've got this full steel bumper that's also gonna house the winch. That's a 3,000 pound winch. So when I'm off-roading, I'll be able to pull out like bushes, stuff like that. I've also got light pods going on here. So it'll have strobe lights, lift, wheels and tires, fender flares, and I think that's it. So for now, the plan is to take the whole car apart, get everything off. I'm also going to be restoring this as best as I can to make it look perfect. For the front tires, they're so much bigger that even with the lift kit, I'm still going to have to cut all the way up through here, put fender flares on, same with the back. I got to cut into the unibody a little bit, which I'm a little worried about, but everything should go together pretty easily. For the interior, it's a little bit dirty right now, but other than that, it's in completely perfect shape. It's got an aftermarket deck that has satellite and everything like that, leather seats, heated seats. And as of now, it's only got 70,000 miles. So this car is actually in really good shape. So it's kind of a shame to cut it up. It's a clean title, everything like that, but it should be a lot of fun. I imagine with these wheels and tires, the road noise is going to be terrible. So I'm going to strip out the entire carpet and do sound deadening, make it perfect, make sure everything's clean, make sure nothing's broken, get it lifted up. I have to drop the front and the rear subframe, which is going to be fun. And then basically for the entire lift, it's just spacers and lengthening everything out. So I'll be showing that. Also, if you're interested in building cars or want to watch the process of one being built, I've got tons of different Corvette C7 videos where I did a full rebuild, a year and 3 months, rebuilding my 2015 manual transmission Z51 Corvette, and I love it. It's my daily driver now that this is in the shop. First things first, I'm just going to go ahead and strip out the entire interior. Should be easy, pretty straightforward. Time to strip it down. I guess I didn't say this before, but the reason that I'm taking the seats out is when it comes to detailing a car, if I'm going to do it, I just want to do it once, make it right. And I like to see what's underneath. Sometimes there's cigarettes. I found one of those in my Corvette, but also I need to take these out in order to take off the entire carpet because my plan is to do sound deadening throughout the entire thing. I might do it on the roof. I started on the roof and then it was kind of boring. So I just moved on to the seats and on to the next one. Also, for me at least, I always feel like it's a really good sign of how well someone took care of a car, seeing underneath the seats, and these look pretty good. No stains or anything like that. Everything looks clean. Also, surprisingly, in a smart car, you end up sitting up really high, partially because of the frame on the seat, and you sit on this platform deal, which is kind of interesting, and it looks really clean under here too. Oh, subwoofer. Very cool. At this point, that should be everything out of the interior that I need to do to pull the carpet out. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that and see how dirty it is. It took a while and it was very hard to access because the brake pedal doesn't move and it has to go in through this little tiny hole. Everything on the inside is super clean. Everything looks like it's in tip-top shape. I really can't say anything bad about it. But, ouch. But I don't have the sound editing material quite yet, so I'm just gonna move on to the lift kit and tackle this another day. So I went to take off the wheels on the car, but I wasn't sure what size lugs they were. So I go looking and I grab like an 18, 19, everything, try to figure it out. Everything's too big. The size lugs on this car is a 15 millimeter, which is really funny because normally it's like 19, 21, 20. And there's only 12 on the entire car. Normally a car is gonna have in between 24 and 20. So interesting car and I'm having fun. So here are the wheels and tires. Obviously they're incredibly small compared to what I'm used to. This is the front tire right here. And I'm not a big guy, I'm kind of a short guy, but I can easily hold this whole thing. I might be able to plumb it. Jeez, just not strong enough, but they're tiny. Everything looks really clean under here, front and back. Obviously some road grime, stuff like that, but no rust or anything. So it should be pretty straightforward. As far as I know, the spacer is going up on top of this spring, so we're gonna have to drop down the entire subframe. Basically the same deal in the front, with the exception of a steering rack extension. We'll see. So right here is gonna be everything for the suspension lift. All these are strut extensions, so you're just gonna put these on top, and then you've got a bolt that's gonna screw onto the original strut, go through there, and then probably the nuts in the engine bay, we'll see. For the rear suspension, you're just going to be dropping the lower subframe. These are also labeled front, so you put it in there right, and this is just your lift, and it keeps your angle. These pieces are also for the physical shocks. I believe it's in the, actually don't know if it's in the front or back, I'll find out, but just an extension. So the original is going to plug into here, and then the aftermarket's going to plug into there, and then this is like a retainer piece that I believe you have to drill a hole for, like that. Show you guys that. And then here's all the spacers for the subframe. So all these bolts are just the extended hardware because obviously the factory ones won't fit anymore. So 4 there, 2 in the front probably. So it should look a little something like that once it gets bolted up, but we'll see. The only other piece is this extension for the steering. So this just slides onto the old piece that looks just like this in there, and it just extends it about 1.5 inches probably, and that's all you need. So I've tried to do the other side first so that I can do this side a bit more smoothly. With my current setup and the way that the car is jacked up, I really can't put a whole ton of pressure either way because even yesterday trying to get this spring out, I was only on 3 jack stands and it was really sketchy. So now what I'm doing is I've just gone ahead and dropped this entire subframe in the back. I don't know if it's a subframe, kind of acts like a sway bar type thing. I'm not really sure what it's called, but the spacer goes right here and here. I'm going to drop the entire thing because once one side is dropped, it's very difficult to line up the other side because it kicks out an angle and there's too much pressure from the lift. So I'm going to drop this whole thing. It unbolts here and here, and that should be it. And then I can just go ahead and install my spacers on both sides at one time and then pull this down, hopefully. Not sure, but I think it's going to go pretty smooth. I'm going to show it here soon, but what I found is that pushing this down is quite a bit more sketchy than I would like to do, especially in this garage. With a lift, that's probably the way that you could do it, is just take out one side and then put the other side up when it's ready. But what I've done is just, I put a bottle jack back here and here and then just pushed it down. So I'll show that pretty soon. With this cross member now down, the only thing is going to be to take out this bolt for the suspension. Then this whole piece should be dropping down. Pull out the spring, get the puck in there, put it all back up, and then we'll be able to independently put this piece back up there with the spacers and then just pull it down, reconnect it, and I think it should be good. Like I said, this isn't how you're supposed to do it, but just because of the way that my car is jacked up, this is probably the safest way for me, and I'm by myself. So I just realized I made a big mistake. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but the whole thing just dropped at once, which is not what you want. And that wouldn't have happened if I still had those bolts connected. So I guess don't do that. And my other spring popped out that I already had the block in. So I'm gonna try to fix it. The idea of dropping that rear crossmember thing is getting worse and worse. I ended up just putting the front of the car back on jack so it's stable, and then I'm gonna go ahead, I removed the spring, the shock is gonna stay disconnected, and then I'm gonna raise it back up, connect everything how it's supposed to be, and restart. This clip is probably 2 hours later. It took forever, but now you can see the difference. That side is completely installed, ready to go, and now I just need to jack it way up because there's a ton more tension than on this side. Drop that down and try to match it. Also, in trying to take this sway bar out, I ended up just removing the spring and the bolt that holds the shock in to make it a little bit easier. Now it's quite a bit more floppy than I'd want, but I'm just gonna stick a bottle jack right here and up on the body of the car, push it down, and I think that's gonna be just fine. Clearly I struggled with that, but now it's all in. The way that I did it was obviously bottle jack, and then I was playing with the other side to try to mix and match the tension that the cross member is putting and the tension that the control arm is putting. The way that I did it is I got the spring in on the bottom, held the spring to the side, and then had the shorter end on this side so that I could get it in, and then once it was in, I could just manipulate the puck to get it perfectly straight headed forward, whereas it would be harder to put it in that way. So now it's all good, and I just need to lower this down a little bit because I don't like all that tension on there. I feel like it's gonna come out and bust my teeth. And then all that's left for here is obviously this big puck and then this suspension extender. So if you look over here, so as you can see right here, my suspension is way up higher than this. So this piece is gonna sit in there right like that, bolt in at the original factory spot, and then a hole gets drilled in this back hole that you can see. So I'm gonna drill that, connect everything, lower it, and then rear end will be done. So right in line with that as best I can with a 3/8 bit, just drill it out. So this bolt just gets punched right through that hole. It's a pretty tight fit, but it goes in well. And then I just have a nut taped onto the end of a 17-inch wrench. So stick it through the frame tube. I'll show that in a second. Try to line up the threads and tighten it on. They're both 17 millimeter. So that all went very smoothly. Now all I need to do is lower the jack a little bit, align this suspension, pop it in, and then we'll be moving on to the front, and the back will be completely done except for cutting the wheel well. The rear is now completely done. I went through and torqued everything back to factory spec. Then I'm gonna drive it a little bit once the full lift kit is done, and then torque it again to make sure it's all good. The car's finally back on 4 wheels, so I can take off this side skirt, move onto the front, and get all that taken off. I guess I should have known. This is my first lift kit, so I guess I didn't know. But as soon as I go to spin it, obviously the whole thing just spins. So I don't have the wobble extension to get a really big angle, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this entire front support deal. And hopefully that'll make me able to get my impact in there and zip them off.
Perfect.
Right off. Set on Milwaukee, boys. So right up here is the steering linkage where we need to make an extension. As you can see, if I move the wheel, it moves back and forth. So I'm just gonna disconnect that and get it ready for the extension. With the steering extender ready to go on, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect all 4 of these bolts. I'm gonna do one side at a time so that the whole cradle doesn't come falling down. But once I take these 2 bolts out, the top strut should fall out too. So I'll be able to pull that out like this, put the new piece on, put it back, and then move on to the other side. Should be easy, but we'll see. That seemed to go really well. So the next step here is just gonna be to screw that extension on, which is right here, and then add this on top. Should be perfect. At this point with the suspension, it's completely done. Obviously the puck up top is installed. This is an extra 1 inch for more stiffness and more height. The next big step of this build is to cut out the frame. So I've looked at a bunch of pictures and everything like that, and basically what everything says is you want to follow this natural curve out here and follow this body line down. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off the door, make a cut right down through here. I'm going to have to take out part of this pinch weld, and then I'll be able to weld in a plate, bondo it, paint it, should be perfect. So right here I've got this body line to follow. I know that this piece is going to end up being completely flat in here, so I kind of know where to cut. But for now, I've never cut off a body piece like this before, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to find underneath. My goal is to stay out of the footwell, so I'm just going to make this cut, look inside, see where I'm at, make another few cuts on the inside, and then slowly just cut away until I get a smooth line that I'm happy with. Put the wheel on, and then everything should be smooth from there. I kept following this line and cut quite a bit more. I ended my cut right at this pinch weld, and I think that that's going to be good for my clearance. I still need to put the wheel on and check, but I'm going to have to shave this piece off a little bit, and then I should be able to get a straight line from this point to this point, and then I'll have an easy place to weld, and then we should be good up there. Right here, I finally put a tire on to check my clearances. I kept cutting back in that last clip. I just kept cutting down and following that line, trying to get it lined up with the wheel well. So this is where I'm at, fully turned. I'm just barely touching down there, so I have to shave a little bit off. Otherwise, it's looking really good. I went ahead and cut out this portion so that the wheel could fully sit in here. I'm still hitting this line right here, but it's a pinch weld, and I want to keep the most amount of structural integrity possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave the pinch weld. It's going to rub just a little bit, but that's kind of expected when you're lifting a smart car. Here's the first plate welded in. I went ahead and tack welded it a bunch of different times, but this metal is 22 gauge. It's very, very thin. So every single time I try to weld it, it almost wants to put a hole in it. So I just went ahead and tacked it a bunch of times, and then I filled this up with a JB Weld sealer. So once this dries, I'm going to go ahead and sand it, bondo it, and then paint it. From here, it's just onto the interior. Then I can pull this thing out, get it washed off, get all this glue residue out of here that I was grinding, get it clean, reassemble, cut the fender flares, and then we should be done. I put this back together off camera, and from here, this should get us good to roll it out. My issue now is that my wheels won't fit in the back. I tried jacking it up and putting one of the big wheels back here, but it won't fit. So right now, I'm gonna go ahead and just make a small cut just so I can get the wheels in to see where I need to put the fender flares at. I want it to be able to sit on its own weight so I can see just exactly where the suspension's gonna be. But already I can tell this thing is massive off the ground compared to what it used to be. So I'm gonna get that cut, and then we'll see where we're at and make modifications from there. I just got this rear tire on, and it actually looks like it's fitting really well. Probably this is the arch I'm actually going to stick with, so I'm going to go ahead and put the fender flare right on here like this. I'm going to trim a little bit back just in case down here. I'm going to kind of get a smoother line going here. It comes down and then kind of abruptly goes straight. So I'm going to just kind of file that back a little bit, and then this back piece is touching the rear tire. So I'm going to come down here, make a cut across. I'm going to try to find a way to get them perfectly identical on each side. Not 100% sure what I'm going to do there. Maybe I'll caliper from here over, get a line, and then figure out some sort of line here. But other than that, it's looking really good. So there's the stance as it is now. And I'm just going to make those cuts, get the other side done as well, and then I think we're going to be good. Here's the back end now that the cut is finished, and both sides are symmetrical to each other, so I'm happy with that. The clearance is totally fine. There's no rubbing at all. So I'm just going to go through and kind of sand this fender, make sure everything is smooth, and then that'll get me ready to do the fender flares. Before I do that, I'm going to move on to the front end. Usually there's that one bolt here. There's one on the inside here, and that's all that holds this fender on, and clearly we took most of that away. So I can already assume I'm going to cut probably 3 inches up, and that's all the fender I'm going to have, and then go from there. So I'm just going to get that first cut a little bit so I can size it up here to kind of see where I want the fender flare to end up, and then just keep working from there. Here's my cut at about 1.5 inches. I know it's not pretty, but I have to go more anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm completely deleting this tab here because obviously it's gone since we cut this. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit more off here, try to blend it in up through here, and then that should give me a good distance on top. I think this is probably pretty good for what I need for now. And then in the front, I'm just gonna taper it off, coming across here, and it should tie in pretty good. At this point, I'm ready to install the first nut. So these are gonna be permanent threads in the bodywork so that you can unscrew the fender flares at any time. Just screw onto this piece. It's just a nut with threads. You push it in and then it's kind of like a rivet. So it'll squish it all together and permanently stick it in there. There we go. So that nut is now permanently in there. Then I just need to follow this line up to my tape line, keep drilling holes, follow it around, and then at the very end I can draw a line here to see exactly where I need to finish these cuts, and then it'll be all good. This fender flare is now done. I have a pretty uniform gap going along the whole thing and it looks really good. It's gonna look a lot better too once this has the bedliner painted and the side skirt mounted. For the front end, I'm gonna wait until the whole thing is fully put together so I can see exactly how much angle I've got. Right now it's rubbing, but it's not fully secured, so we'll see later. Next thing is just to move on to the rear, and I'll show you that fender flare right now. This rear flare is gonna be quite a bit more simple. I've got this body line already right there, so I'm just gonna line it up, kind of tape it on, drill some holes, and it'll go much quicker. The rear end is now done. Both sides, they look really good. Now all that's left is fit the front end on. I reassembled it again. I'm gonna have to make some more cuts on the very bottom diffuser, which is fine, I expected that. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I have clearance everywhere, and from here on out should be really straightforward. All right, so I just put the front end on, and this is my first time seeing it actually complete with the front end on, fender flares, everything, and this thing looks insane. When I first got it, I was probably taller than it, and I'm a tall guy, I'm 5'10", and now it's way taller than me, so this thing is awesome. Obviously for the front end, it's not fully put together. I don't have a single screw holding it in, so it's still kind of flopping. And I've set it up that way because I knew I'd have to take it off again to make cuts. You can see here barely where I made this cut, and then the bumper just kind of juts out. So I'm gonna find a shape that I like and hold it up here, find how I wanna cut it, and then just mirror it to the other side so it's even. And then the last thing I need to do is install this front bumper. So there's a hole here, that's the original tow hook from factory, and then this hole that I just drilled. When I had it apart, I could see where it went, so I just drilled it. Here I can just take a razor blade and shave it until it fits. But that's gonna be the next big thing, is getting the winch all hooked up, wired up to the battery, everything like that. And it should be pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna get these fenders cut, make sure everything fits, get started on the front bumper, and I'll be test fitting it first, make sure everything's hooked up good. And then I'm gonna bedliner the whole thing. So it's gonna be perfect. I've got a bunch of bedliner to do on this entire car. Everything basically is gonna go underneath of the wheel liners. So that's gonna be really simple though. I'm only gonna go back about 3 inches, cut it, make sure everything's protected because I got the air box in the back and all the lights and stuff up front. So I'm just gonna do that, keep getting to work, hopefully go for a drive soon, go for a stop. We're also gonna be testing this hitch. It's supposed to be 3,000 pounds and we'll see about that. I've got a car out there that's about 3,200 pounds and we'll see if it can stop it. So for this body line, this is what I came up with. This being the Brabus model, it makes it a little bit more tricky because I've got this vent down here. So I'm just gonna completely bypass that, draw a straight line from the bottom of the bumper, go up and then tie in with this natural body line from the fog light. So I got a smooth line there and then just come up and cut across. I'll do my measurements later so I can match the other side perfect. And then I'll have to trim off a little bit of the fender flare. Here's that cut. I think it turned out pretty good, and definitely you'd never even know that there was a big vent right here. So also the funny thing is, when I went to buy this car, the guy was like, yeah, dude, not a scratch on it. It's in perfect condition, everything. The only thing is at the front bumper, there's some scrapes up front. Not anymore, buddy. So I just took the car for a test drive. Everything seems to be working great, except for my clearance is really bad going around corners, everything like that. And I didn't really account for the suspension travel. So every single time I hit a bump, I'm rubbing there too. But for the rear end, it's gonna be just fine because I can feel where it's rubbing and it's just gonna be a little bit. So it'll probably just perfectly carve out the line that I would have cut anyway. I'm not too worried about it. The front end, I think I'm gonna have to do a lot more cutting. Where you can see right here, I tried to give it a really factory look, but most of the cars online, their cut starts about here. I think I'm gonna end up having to do that because even when I turn a little bit, it starts to rub. So if I hit a corner, this thing gets thrown around. Not good. So I'm just gonna keep working on that. It's gonna be a little boring. I guess I'll just do it off camera. It's gonna be a lot of driving back and forth, seeing where it's rubbing, cutting, everything like that. Got to sand a bunch and go from there, but turned out pretty good. I've got no lights, nothing like that. Everything works good. Traction control works good. Tire pressure sensors haven't reset yet, so I have a light, but I know that's gonna go away. And so far so good, just gonna keep trucking. And as of now, I first took that video and I said I was gonna post it on Cars and Bids. I'm in between doing that and doing a bunch of testing to see if this thing can jump, if it can hang from a tree, if it can do burnouts, if it can drive on ice, snow, water, land, grass, fire, everything. So in between testing it, in between selling it, we'll see. I'm gonna put it in the comments what I think I should do. And that's about it.
Right now is about a week later. I have COVID and I was out driving the car doing some testing. I initially thought that the tires were just gonna rub and show me where to cut. That didn't happen because during my testing, I went about 40 miles an hour over a speed bump just to make sure it would make it or get air. I don't know, I was just testing. And what happened was I bottomed out in the back. My fender flares popped out, broke one of them. So I just replaced those and I did my wheel liners in the back. I had to modify them quite a bit, but now they're completely covering the engine, so I'm not worried about it. So the rear end is completely done now until I do some more stuff. But for the front, I went ahead and cut a whole bunch more up here. You can see it goes up a whole nother like 2 or 3 inches up there. Both sides, everything looks even too because I used a template and I'm really happy with it. So before I put the fender flares on, the whole front end's gonna come off again. We're doing Bedliner on everything, tightening it up, making sure everything is completely done. And then from there, it's just gonna be the fun stuff like the front winch and lights and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna keep getting to work, pull this thing apart again, do it for the final last time, make sure everything's dialed, make sure everything's tight. I took it on the freeway and forgot to check the wheels, but here I am. So far so good, it's going well.
So here's the finished product. This is my first time using Bedliner and I think it turned out really good. The lines aren't perfect. I could try to clean them up a little bit more, but it all gets covered by the door anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this good. Throw on the front door, do the exact same thing to the other side. And originally I was gonna do Bedliner on this entire interior here, but there's no wiring or anything like that other than this light, which is just the side marker for the fender that sits way up here. So I'm not worried about any of the wiring. Everything's tied up tight, all the brake lines are good, everything's looking good. So I'm just gonna do some reassembly, completely ditch the front wheel liners, move on to the other side, and then all that's left to do on this car is literally just the winch, get that wired up, put the Bedliner on the front bumper too, and then we'll be all done. This other side is now done. It's drying off, which means it's time to move on to the front bumper. So this thing is a little bit oxidized. I'm gonna go ahead and clean it off with some Scotch-Brite, acetone it, and then get ready to paint it with that same stuff. Everything for this kit comes labeled, so obviously these 2 really long wires go directly to the battery, so that's what I'm going to have to run through the cabin. The other 2 smaller, black and red, are going to go straight to here. And then here sits the brain, so this is going to mount somewhere up in here, and then right here is the connection for the hand control. That's going to mount somewhere up in here. I think I'm going to do it under the hood so it's completely clean and away from the elements. And then this big long one, I believe, is going to run into the interior. So it's going to be pretty simple. I think I know how to do everything. I'm not sure exactly what this is going to connect to, but I'm assuming it's the 12 volt to the cigarette lighter. And then other than that, I've got another one right here. I'm not sure what this is either. Maybe it's the ground, but I don't think so. So I'm going to figure that out and then work on figuring out where all this stuff's going to go. This is just going to be 2 screws right here. Probably going to sit something like that. This thing, probably going to mount it there, and it should be pretty straightforward. So the wiring gets a little confusing when it's all laid out like this. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with the first connection straight to the battery. So it's going to be mounted somewhere up in this area where the headlight would have been. And I found this flat plate right up here that comes in right above the footwell. So I'm going to drill 2 holes through there, try to keep the wires away from each other, route them down to the battery, connect that, and then just go from there for the wiring. Now that this piece is running through the firewall, I'm going to switch the wires so they're not crossed, but I have a really simple line from power to the winch is going to go right here, and then the ground for the winch installs the same exact way. So
So at this point, this is done. The winch is completely wired up and it should turn on as soon as I plug it in. So this right here is going to be the connection for the hand control. Not sure where I'm going to mount it, but I can still mount it up dry and see where it's kind of going to land. So that's connected, and the only thing left is this wire. I'm assuming it's just a power wire, so I'm just going to plug it in maybe to a headlight so that whenever the headlights come on, this gets power as well. So that part's taken care of. The only thing that's left is going to be this switch that mounts in the inside of the car. So I've got a wire running from that exact cord up to this. It's going to go into the car and then have this plug in right to the 12 volt, the cigarette lighter. So everything's pretty much lining up perfect. I'm going to figure out where to mount this stuff, and then we'll go through and test out the winch and see how it works, if it doesn't work, and what it can pull. This is all wired up now, so here's the brain. I've got 3 holes for the accessories and the power going into the car. Comes right out, connects to the winch, and then I've just got this thing where I connect the handle. I'm going to mount that somewhere up in here, but for now everything is completely connected. I just need to figure out where everything is going to go, where it fits, to where the headlights can fit too. I looked around a lot and there's just not a whole lot of room to mount the brain of the winch, so I decided to pull off the front crash bar, and then I'm going to mount it right in here at the bottom. So it's going to sit back here right like this, and it'll be out of the elements. Should be pretty much perfect. So I'm going to drill these 2 holes, get it bolted up, and then I can wire everything, and then we'll be done with the winch. Everything is mocked up for the wiring. As you can see here, everything is running right underneath of the crash bar, so it looks really nice. Everything's tucked away back in here, and then it connects right up in here in the firewall. So I'm happy with that. The only thing I'm missing for now is those pod lights. So those are just a basic black-red wire. So those are going to tie in really easily and go right into there as well. And then I've also got that wire for the hand control where it's going to all plug in and it's all going to be perfect. So I'm going to drill another hole, end up running those wires through, and that should wrap it up for the wiring. And then the only thing left to do is to put it all inside of the car, which is going to be pretty easy. Quick update on the wiring. Everything's looking really good. It looks really nice in there especially. Coming out, it all meets up at the bottom. Everything is weather protected now and it's completely in there good for finish. The only other thing that's left is obviously wire up the winch, which is going to come a little bit later once the front bumper's on, and the whole front cowling, so I'm not worried about that. The only other thing is these wires, which run through here, which is the switch on the inside of the car. So I just need to wire that up, and then I'm going to pigtail into those with the front fog lights, and then everything should be working all good. I also have a switch I'm going to wire into the interior, but I'm going to do that later. For now, the front end is just about done. I'm just going to button it up, connect these wires, and then we'll see what it looks like when it's done. Before I call that done, I'm going to go ahead and check out my fog lights. So I've got them just kind of wired up temporary. So I've got that wire coming through, connected to the power source, which for now is just a spare battery. Later, it's going to plug into the 12 volt, so I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure everything works. I've got the switch wired in. Everything looks like it's going to be good, so I'm going to go ahead and test out this light. You'll be able to see it right there and make sure everything's working. Then we can for sure button it up and get it finished, so I won't have to do this again. So right here, I've got the switch connected with a basic ground on this little battery, and turn it on. Cool, so you'll just turn the switch a bunch of times to figure out what you want, but I'm assuming these are just going to stay on or always be off, so it's perfect. Now that I know that this works, I'm going to mount up all my wiring up in here, make it look really nice, and then completely finish everything off. The only other loose end for this entire wiring, everything looks great, but it's just this hot wire that comes off of the hand control. It sits right there, but I'm just going to tie that right into the fog lights because it's all going to be ran off the 12 volt, so it's going to get power there. And then the 12 volt is only going to come on when the car's on, so this isn't going to be a parasitic drain or anything like that. Here's the last update before it's completely done. Everything's wired up, it's coming out of the bumper, and then I went ahead and cut this hole right there. That's going to be for all the wiring up front. It's going to go from the hole directly to the bumper, and my license plate retainer covers that, so I'm just going to drill a tiny hole in there, and then that wire is just going to poke right through it. Should be really flush and look great. Other than that, everything's wired up. The interior is completely wired. Everything is running to the battery, so as soon as I plug this thing into the winch, it should be hot. So I'm going to install this bumper, get everything tightened up, make sure everything looks good, and then we'll do some testing. That should be everything, so I'm going to hop in the car and see if it works. Sweet. Fog lights are good. Alright, so clearly the winch works. Now I'm going to go ahead and test out this handheld deal and see if that works too. This is also my first winch. Sweet, it works. Now that I know everything's working, I can go ahead and just button this stuff up, make sure everything's perfect, reinstall the headlights, get the fender flares on, and then we'll go outside and pull some stuff.
I also just checked and absolutely nothing runs without the ignition on, which means everything is hardwired to the battery, but the way that I wired it and the way that the brain is talking to the ignition system, everything is working only when the car's on. So that's great, and it also means my battery's not gonna drain. So I'm really happy with that, and I'm just gonna completely finish up this front end, get everything nice and tight and secure, looking just a little bit better. So here's the finished product. I think it turned out really good. In the next video, I decided I'm gonna go ahead and do some testing with it, check out the winch, see what it can pull, see what it can't pull. Maybe we'll take it off a jump, I don't know yet, but that's gonna be it for this video. I'm really not sure if I'm gonna put on Cars and Bids or just enjoy it and have fun, because it took me a long time to build this and it was super fun, and I think it turned out great. So I might be keeping it, I really don't know. So thanks for watching. There's obviously gonna be a bunch more videos on this until it sells, if I do sell it, so we'll see. And if you like stuff like this, I also rebuilt a Corvette C7 that's all over my channel. So if you want to keep watching, check that out. If not, then don't watch it. And thanks for watching.